Hello everyone. This is Charlotte Pierce. I'm the producer of Ready Row USA, and we are here with our guest cast for the evening. Our artists, Dan Boyne. You can wave your hand if I say your name. Don't stand up though. He's an author, Dan Boyne, and printmaker and sculptor Nancy Diessner. Nancy. And a painter and photographer, Susan Wood. She's also a coach, and I think all of them are coaches as well. But filmmaker, Eamon Glavin. So Eamon is a filmmaker and videographer. So welcome to the podcast, live stream / podcast. Thanks for coming.
Great to be here.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. So Susan's out there in Oregon, Eamon's in Philadelphia, Nancy's in Northampton, and I'm in Boston. So yeah, so it is truly Ready Row USA. I'd like to acknowledge a couple of sponsors before we get into our discussion about the connection between art and rowing and how these people, these artists got involved in expressing their love for the sport that way. But my web designer, Good Inklings, has designed a new website. We've had it up for about 6 months now, goodinklings.com. Thank you very much, Laura Williams. And also Resolute and Sykes have been sponsors for for about 6 months. And I actually have a Sykes shell now, lodged at Community Rowing, which is the backdrop behind me. Love it. And Burnham Boats, or as we know it, Burnham Boats Slings, is a sponsor and also a member of our Customer Service Hall of Fame. And our I'm not advancing them in the right location. Good Inklings, like I said, she's the web designer, and I would like to have each of you maybe give a little brief introduction of your rowing and how you've connected it with your art. And Nancy, do you want to go first? And we'll just kind of go around briefly, and then we'll just have a discussion.
Sure. So I started rowing really late in life at 57 and fell madly in love with it. Sculling. I've never done sweep, but one of the things, among many things that I loved about it, was this incredible relationship with the water, of just flying across the surface of the water. And I soon after I started rowing, I came into an old wooden fiberglass flyweight shell that Calvin Coffey, it was an old coffee single, that CRI was giving up for their new Hudsons. And I restored that boat, and I learned an awful lot about boat building and some of the skill and crafts that goes into it. And then soon after that, I was working on a proposal for a show around the theme of the space between. And it seemed to me, well, the space between, I was thinking a lot about the space between this beautiful sky and the heron, and then this dark water that was like the subconscious, and where those two met. Mm-hmm. And so that started the boat paper sculptures that you see. I'm actually not a sculptor, but they're filled with images, and some of the skills that I learned from building boats are there. So
and I met you at CRI, but through that the Robbie, when you were restoring that boat, which it just says so much about you, like thorough immersion in this sport and the craft and the art and how things are constructed and built.
Yeah, well, it was a sweet boat.
Yeah, it's a good one. It lives on, I think, somewhere.
Yep.
Yeah. Susan, tell us a little bit about your paintings. I actually kind of got to know them on Instagram, and then we connected. But you know a lot of people I know, and I think you know Dan as well. So
Well, first off, thanks, Charlotte, for including me. I appreciate what Ready Row USA is doing. So thank you for promoting the idea of artists in rowing. I started rowing in 1980 in college, and I was completely fell in love the moment I saw it, because I love the light, and I love how light kind of reflects off the water and reflects off the puddles you leave, and especially when the water is calm and you see the reflection. And I am so grounded whenever I see nature or I'm in nature. And so I instantly had a real visceral reaction to just being on the water or seeing it from afar. My first freshman year of college, I just obsessively photographed it, and from every possible angle, hitchhiking everywhere in the early hours, and just loved it. And I think in that moment, I also learned how to watch the sport and see it. So I started to develop, without my knowing it, an eye for coaching it, as I would ride in the launch with any coach that would let me. In 1982, I started coaching it. So I always have this, it's almost like my passion's kind of fighting, as far as I love to row. I do sweep and sculling. I love to coach. I love the idea of using my words to try to form a person into making a boat go well and having them row well. But most of all, I just absolutely love the beauty of it. So I photograph it every single day. And then when I paint, I'm just simply trying to capture what I feel or what I see and expressing it. Sometimes I paint following a dream I had about rigging. Sometimes I paint.
We've all had those dreams.
But I just, I love every aspect of it. And I feel fortunate that I seem to have the ability to express it visually. So it just brings great joy to me to share it.
I love it. Thank you so much for being here and telling us. I've learned a lot already. I'd just like to mention that this is Ready Row USA, and some of you may be listening after we pull the audio from the live stream. So we will have all these images of the artists that you're hearing on our blog post at readyrowusa.com. So never fear, you will be able to connect with them through that. Their websites are also there. But thank you so much, Susan. These are a few of your images, and I love the puddles.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think they're fascinating and just beautiful.
When I first started rowing, I called them dimples. Yeah, so there, and then, yeah, so.
Wow. Yeah,
aren't they cool? Aren't these great? So you all who are listening will be able to see these on readyrowusa.com. So thank you. So Dan, you're next up. Tell us what your background is a little bit. I know you're a Harvard rowing instructor and a yoga instructor and the prolific author of rowing books. So how did that come to be?
I just want to listen to Nancy and Susan.
I get it. Yeah, I get it.
No, it's fascinating. I, like most, became fascinated with the beauty of the sport. And I started rowing back in the 70s, which is kind of strange since I'm only 30 now. But
yeah, it's amazing.
Advanced mathematics.
That's what they teach you at Harvard.
That's right.
Yeah.
So at the time, there weren't too many books on rowing out there. There were rigging manuals. There were a lot of technical books on coaching. There used to be this big red book that was really wonderful because it was so amateur. It was essays by various coaches on how to rig, there was even a chapter like how to coach women's rowing. It's different, by, of course, a man.
Yeah, by a man.
Right. Yeah. And, but the book that really kind of inspired me to start writing was called The Amateurs by David Halberstam, the celebrated journalist. And it was a small little wonderful book, journalistic in nature, very terse, very almost like sketches of these scullers. who are now famous,
Mm-hmm.
at least to some of us. And
I know one of them.
yeah, I know. Yeah. So I was in college at Trinity, a small school in Hartford, Connecticut, rowing. And I thought, I really want to write a book about rowing, but what should I do? So then became this quest to figure out what to write about. And originally I saw myself as a fiction writer. And like the two artists before me, I thought, well, that's the way to capture the beauty of sport. Fiction is more like art, literary art, than nonfiction. That's what I'll do. But my first efforts were kind of a bomb. Not everything. And curiously enough, the Red Rose crew, which is, I think, now being flashed on the screen, not many people know this, but a section of the chapter on the scholar Gail Pearson, who was the 7th seat, was robbed or stolen, magpied from my original failed novel. And I used it as a description of a woman walking down the dock.
So stolen by you.
Stolen by me, for me.
Okay.
And you never throw anything out when you write. And so, long story short, I wrote a manual on sculling, but I really wanted to get back to this artistic rendering of the beauty of the sport in words, to exhibit some of the poetry, some of the visuals in words, to paint with words, to express the kinesthetic wonder of boats moving across water, as I think Susan said, or maybe it was Nancy, probably Nancy, the light and how it reflects and refracts off the water, all of that, but in words. And to do that, I needed a story. So luckily, the Red Rose crew was put in my lap purposefully by the women in that boat, and they said, "You should do that. You should do this. Why don't you do this?" And so I did that, and then I did the Kelly story by walking into a bunch of bars in Philly, and
let me get
the
that
boathouse,
up.
the boathouse bars, and the old men in because all the boathouses there have or a lot of them have pubs.
Yeah.
And I was just thinking of writing this book. I wasn't really definite about it. But by the time I finished going through these boathouses, they were all introducing me as the young man who was going to write the book about Jack Kelly.
And he's the father of Grace Kelly, is that right? Yeah, right. Okay.
And anyway, I'm talking way too much, but my last book just came out, which was autobiographical, about how I wrote at Trinity, more humorous, the 7th seat. And finally, to be published coming up in a year, will be my first detective novel called Body of Water.
All dealing with rowing. Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
So, yeah, I wrote occasionally with one of your subjects of the Red Rose crew, Ann Warner. And I loved how you described them, and I actually read the book on audio. Does that qualify as reading?
No.
No, Dan. But it was great. I'd walk my dog and listen to the book, and it came to life for me. The words are the words. So
true.
Yeah. We're gonna come around to Eamon Glavin, our filmmaker and photographer. And hi, Eamon. Thank you for waiting.
Oh, good. Great to be here.
You good? Yeah. So tell us a little bit about how you connected with expressing yourself through film and
so I spent a lot of time trying to train as much as I could, and then it got to a point where I wanted to challenge myself to follow what my idols had been doing on YouTube, and I created daily vlogs, and I filmed myself rowing every single day. I created one video per day. I built a very small following in the rowing community. And then next thing I know, I'm back home in Philadelphia from having lived in Ireland, just twiddling my thumbs, trying to figure out what was next for me and my life. And I started filming essentially some of the top lightweights in the country, trying to train for the Olympics and get to the Olympic level. And as I was doing that, I met a few other people, and next thing I know, I'm filming Jevy Stone and her training group down in Austin, John Graves, and then one thing led to another, and I'm creating a full feature-length film documentary about going from an independent club rower to the Olympics and the process that you have to go through to get through to that. There have been a couple of very key points in my life of, you know, I started rowing in high school. I made a video about, you know, my high school's rowing team, and then I went to college and I was helping run that rowing team. And while I was there, I was doing all the media and creating the videos to put on the Instagram so that we could attract a little bit more alumni, you know, donations to help us fund ourselves to keep going. And that just kept extending. And next thing I know, I'm using one of the biggest cameras that anyone's ever seen on a launch that's not like a professional production.
Oh, let me get that up there. Yeah.
And this thing is where I'm spending a lot of time behind on the launch, trying to make sure that I can capture some extremely cool looking rowing.
Now, do you take that in the shell too, or the single?
No, but I'll take my drone and I'll fly the drone while I'm rowing. And that kind of, but no one's ever done that before. Like it's always ever been someone in the launch and someone in the, on the side of the dock.
So when I was talking to you before we set this, you know, as we were setting this up, you said something about your approach to video, because like there are, you know, millions of hours of rowing video out there.
Yeah.
And how do you sort of, I don't know, what's your niche?
My niche in the whole is I can do like slow motion, high quality slow motion videos. So I like to call it the coach's eye. And you know, everyone has the coach on the launch that just films it from the side. And it always looks the same. You can kind of work on technique. But the reason I have this giant lens to zoom is so that I am right up in their nostrils, essentially. And one of the things that's on screen right now is I am using 2 GoPros in the boat right there. I'm using one that is really small. You can see it in my hand. And that is the first GoPro that was ever created, or one of the first. And that's shooting in 720p. That large screen behind it is the second GoPro, and that's shooting in 4K.
Wow.
So you can see the difference in what the size of the footage is. And it's really, really nice to be able to zoom in a little bit and not lose quality.
And then you can edit that in and out of a piece.
Yep.
Right,
And so when I film and create for social media, which is a lot of what I'm doing right now, I'm focusing a lot on posting on Instagram and TikToks, vertical videos. I still shoot horizontal because I'm always thinking to shoot my footage horizontal, because rowing's a very horizontal sport. It's very long boats, sideways, you know, the stroke, it's very difficult to get it vertical. And so
Nancy does that with her art.
Yeah.
She's got the vertical boats.
Yeah. So I'm able to use like a 4K image and crop in and not lose any quality. And a lot of people tend to, when they crop in, it gets very blurry and everyone's like, oh, it just looks like crappy video.
Yeah.
So that's where my niche is I'm actually able to use equipment, having been trained with it and tried it, and be such a rowing nerd that I'm going to go to the practices every day to film the practices. And that allows me to get tons of different types of shots.
Yeah, that's cool. I had one other question for you, but I wanted to acknowledge the fact that we have one of our fans here, Rowing the World, Ruth Marr. She's got a rowing travel company. And nice. So she's like one of my mentors in the I don't know, rowing business world. And I really appreciate her. I like her approach to rowing travel as well. But and she has a question. Do you think most rowers feel the same about the art of rowing as your articulate speakers express? And I don't know, you all can, no,
not at all.
Not at all. Yeah.
I think everyone's perspective of rowing is unique to them. I think there's a lot of overlap as well. It takes a lot of effort to do what we're all doing. You know, for Eamon to spend his efforts daily, you know, for Nancy to create that art, which I think is fascinating, from from her working on a boat and then expressing it like that.
Mm-hmm.
And for Dan to be able to, I love the way you paint. What did you say? Paint with words.
Mm-hmm.
I think it takes extra time to kind of take in what you feel from the rowing and then express it some way that other people can relate to. Just the effort of taking that time is a lot that people don't generally do. And so maybe that's the difference. But I think everyone looks at things differently.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I
always wonder. I'm sorry.
No, you go.
I always have this fantasy because I just think there's so many things that are so beautiful about the rowing stroke. And sometimes I think, maybe there should be a competition in the aesthetics of rowing. Like, just don't race, just the beauty. Like,
yeah,
there are just so many beautiful rowers out there, who are Olympians or just someone next door. It's so beautiful.
I think we should celebrate that. I agree. Every year about this time, U.S. rowing and all these organizations start hyping up the competition, and that's good. That's great. But Dan and I were talking the other day about, how there's this kind of ocean of people and dogs who, who are out there just kind of enjoying it. They may not want to compete. They may, like me, I compete once in a while, but I just, it stresses me out a lot, just competing. So, I just try to improve, and, I use competition as a way to improve and drive myself, but I don't know where I'm going with that, but I just, I think that's more attention should be paid to that beauty and that just enjoyment and, seeing the heron fly over the stern,
A regatta, though, is beautiful in and of itself.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like a wedding where when things are going to happen. They slice the cake and now they do this. But with the regatta, I love the intensity and the individuality of the athletes as they prepare, as they compete, how they react. It's stunning. I've done so much photography, and I love your work, Eamon, as far as your close-ups and so forth. Back in the day, I used to take a whole lot of slides and then have like 6 projectors and make my own soundtracks of the sound of the boat and all that. And I just never kept with it when everything went digital. And you inspire me to want to explore that.
Yeah, I think so. It was flashed up there earlier, but when I filmed at what was called the Regatta of Death, that video is an encapsulation of one of the absolute most dreadful races you could be a part of if you reach that level. So I
Googled it. It was amazing. Yeah.
The intensity of, you have to get top 2 in order to go and continue chasing your dreams, have the option to even compete for your dreams at the Olympics. And if you don't get through repechages or semifinals, you stop racing. Whereas in most other races in the world stage, you go to a C final or a D final, or sometimes even an E final. And you will continue getting enough racing through. But at the Regatta of Death, it's like, it's done. If you are not in top 2, you're done. So 3rd place, we had, I think it was the U.S. men's pair got 3rd place. And Tom Pezic and Mike DeSanto were 1 spot away from going to the Olympics for another round. But that was it. They didn't cross the line in 1st or 2nd place. And those 2, the Spanish, were the ones that were just like, gave it their all and just out.
Yeah. And even what I was thinking about asking you earlier was what caught me about your description of your film was the taking an independent rowing club member. So this is not somebody who's been sort of like groomed in the system, but somebody who's kind of taking it on themselves too. Is that right?
Yeah. There's a whole system that you can literally show up having never raced before and like against anyone else, and show up to the US Olympic trials and become the winner and represent the US. And depending if on the World Championships the year before, if they've qualified the boat to go to the Olympics, you can go, or you can just go and try and go to the FOQR race.
Yeah.
So that's like it's a very interesting dynamic to be like an independent rower who has to support themselves.
Yeah.
We've currently changed our system in the US rowing to be more club based. There used to be whole training centers like out in Oakland and out in Princeton for the men's and women's team. And if you wanted to go to the Olympics, you had to be there because that's where the best trained.
But you still have to be motivated. You know, you have to have a kind of the big picture in mind. You have to have your goal. And any other observations or questions you want to ask each other? Or
one thing that I wanted to mention about Eamon's films that we haven't talked about is I think when I first saw some of your videos, it was clear that they were made by someone who rows. That the rhythm that went, you're editing, as much as the photography and everything else, but the editing was, it was the rowing stroke going through from different, you'd pick it up in a different rower. I thought that was really unique. Like all of us, I've watched a lot of videos, and I love that seamlessness.
Yeah, that's one of those things that novice editors will just start a stroke at any point, and then it jumps. And I always felt that, like painting and like reading like well-written words, it has to flow. And there's the stroke is like, it's the same thing all the time. That if someone's at, the finish and coming out and then they're up at the front, it's like, it's very jarring. And the only reason you would do that is for effect. But a lot of times it's just because someone doesn't realize, well, if you shift it very slightly, it'll flow better. And like telling people those kinds of things, people ask me a lot of questions about how to do it. And I'm like, well, first of all, connect the stroke all together. It always has to just continue.
Someone named Rep Reviews thinks you're doing awesome videos. Yes. Do you know who that is?
I have no idea.
Yeah, that's nice. We're having some people join. It's so satisfying.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. You're welcome to stick around and debrief after if you want, but I'm going to put up a couple more things here about the podcast. I have an insatiable need for content. So please visit the website and send us your club news, favorite gadgets, stories about rowing. I'd love to cover them in the on the blog or in the podcast. We're also going to this is our inaugural Arts of Rowing session. So thank you all for being part of that, the premiere. But I'd love to, have feature artists from time to time. So send us those suggestions as well. And we have an episode hashtag. It's ReadyRowUSA. Spell it out. Let me just feature this up. Ta-da-ta-da. Oh, somebody says hi. Jeffinator says hi, Susan. I love these names, Jeffinator. Okay.
I used to coach him.
Oh, sweet. Yeah, that's great. So we do have this. I don't know why I can't. There it is. So use the hashtag on social media and we'll stalk you and give you stuff. Companies give us things to give away. So we want to do that. And that helps us get the word out. In last December, we celebrated 3 years and 100 episodes. So this is our 114th. So we've had 14 since then. But we had the recap or the replays are on the website under Rowapalooza, which is a silly name I gave to this celebration of every yearly celebration we have. As long as we keep going forward, we have a lot of good things coming up in 2022. So, we're focusing this year on rowing for all. So, just access and inclusion and broadening the sport and also fitness for life. So those are the two main themes this year. And art fits in, I guess, with fitness for life. It's mental fitness. And thank you so much for being here. I wanted to mention that my publishing company, Pierce Press, we have a new book coming out called Oceans Alive, which sort of relates, if you're into coastal rowing, I guess, you want to be, but all waters affect the quality of the ocean. So this kid who wears a kilt, we don't really know why he wears a kilt, but he does. And he just does. And he and his friends go and they're concerned about the condition of the ocean. So they're saving they organize their community to clean up the beach and other things. Anyway, we have another book that won a couple of awards last year, Who's Hiding in This Book? And piercepress.com is the website where all that can be found. And thank you again to our artists. Let me put your names on here.
Thank you, Charlotte.
Thank you very much, Charlotte.
Yeah, I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I love this topic. It's like, it's not about, how to do a stroke. It's like just the whole gestalt of the sport and why we enjoy it. Anything.
And the fact that there's so many different ways to talk about and show and showcase.
Yeah. And I think understanding artists, the art, or, exposure to art like yours helps with rowing too. The rowing stroke is just, it's an art in itself. So I get a lot out of it. So Dan, any you want to close us out?
Just by saying thank you. And it's been a great talk. I think the question that the person asked originally, my answer to that would be, in terms of how we see things versus the majority of people, is that for me, art is like a second language or a foreign language. And once you learn it, whether it's film, painting, sculpting, writing, it gives you a perspective that's unique and allows you to reflect back on your subject of study, in our case, rowing, in a different way, from a different perspective.
Yeah. Well said. Thank you again for all you do. And we'll close it out here. But
yeah, I'm going to have to get some new books.
Yeah, right. I don't know if Dan approves that I listen to books. Do you approve, Dan? I can read.
Any way you do it is fine.
I would listen to the books while I'm erging.
That's exactly. What need I say more? I think Nancy is the one that turned me on to Essential Sculling, though, and it was really great. So.
I took your book in the boat with me, Dan, when I was learning how to scull, and it's completely waterlogged. It's highlighted even in the boat. So
I am not surprised, Nancy.
Have to make a waterproof version.
All right.
That'd be a good idea.
This will be available on podcast apps tomorrow, so please keep putting it out. It was a wonderful discussion. Thank you so much, all of you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Charlotte.
Right.
Thanks for having us.